Shinpei just had a strange dream about his childhood friend, Ushio. In the dream, she asked him to go back to his hometown and protect her younger sister, Mio, because she couldn't return with him. When Shinpei reached out to Ushio, he suddenly woke up, finding himself accidentally smashing his face in the huge plot of the girl sitting across from him. Naturally, she slapped him. Shinpei was confused by the dream but tried to stay calm. As he collected his thoughts, he saw his hometown, Hitagashima Island, coming into view. It had been 2 years since he was last there. After the boat docked, he stepped back onto the island, noting that it was July 22nd. As he was walking, Mio, Ushio's sister, sped towards him in a car, driving recklessly. She ended up crashing into the sea, but Shinpei quickly pulled her out. They chatted, though Shinpei didn't have much to say about the city since he hadn't been out much. They continued talking about random things until they got home, which doubled as the place for Ushio's funeral. At the funeral, many people held red spider lilies, reminding Shinpei of when his parents died 10 years ago. Afterward, he was adopted by Ushio's family, and to him, Mio and Ushio were more than just friends, they were family. Shinpei had once promised to cook curry for Ushio, but now that would never happen. He overheard people saying that Ushio's body would be autopsied to investigate some things. A sudden flash of light distracted him, but he couldn't figure out where it came from. Before he could think more about it, his best friend Su came running, crying as he told Shinpei that Ushio drowned while trying to save a child. When the hearse arrived, Shinpei wondered why Su's father wanted to perform an autopsy when it seemed clear that Ushio had just drowned. Su told Shinpei to keep an eye on the little girl Ushio had saved, Shiori. People assumed her blank expression was due to the shock from the accident. During the funeral, the priest asked Shinpei to help carry the coffin. Su decided to tell Shinpei everything that night. Later, when Shinpei got home, he cooked for Mio and her father, Uncle Alan. Meanwhile, another Mio was outside, looking into the house. A police officer passing by noticed Mio outside and found it odd that she wasn't inside. That night, Su revealed the real reason for Ushio's autopsy. They found marks on her neck, suggesting she might have been strangled, not just drowned. Only the police, Su, and Mio's family knew this. Mio then gave Shinpei a necklace that Ushio had left behind. She hugged him, crying over her sister's death, and vowed to find out who was responsible. She decided she wouldn't cry anymore, believing that's what Ushio would have wanted. As Shinpei sat there, holding the necklace, old memories flooded back. He couldn't believe Ushio had kept it. The next morning, on July 23rd, Shinpei went to Uncle Alan's shop to help Mio with work. A customer suddenly asked him if he had found the person he was looking for, mentioning a woman with glasses and a massive plot. Shinpei had no memory of this and dismissed it as the ramblings of a drunk man. The local police officer, Tetsu, who was also a relative of Mio's family, came in for a drink. Mio asked why he hadn't been seen at breakfast, and Tetsu mentioned that the family of the little girl Ushio had saved had mysteriously vanished. People speculated they might have run away due to debt. Mio ran off, and Shinpei chased after her. He found her near the family's house, where Mio revealed that a week ago, Shiori had started acting strange. While they were out catching bugs on the mountain, Shiori claimed she saw someone who looked exactly like her. Suddenly, a hunter named Jinjiru appeared and mentioned something called shadow sickness. He explained that during wartime, people who were affected would see their own shadow and then die because of it. According to legend, they had to go to the shrine of Hito for purification. After Jinjiru left, Mio admitted she believed in the disease because 3 days before Ushio died, both sisters had seen Ushio's shadow appear right in front of them. Shinpei tried to stay calm and reminded Mio of her promise not to cry. They decided to go to the Hito shrine for purification. When they arrived, the place was deserted. Suddenly, Mio saw a figure moving nearby and pulled Shinpei to investigate. They found nothing, and the path ahead led to dangerous ruins they couldn't enter. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out. Shinpei rushed to see what had happened and found the woman from the boat lying injured. She tried to say something but was shot in the head before she could finish. Shinpei then saw Mio being captured by her own shadow, who shot and killed the real Mio right in front of him. Before he could react, Shinpei was also shot. In a flash, Shinpei woke up, back in the moment when he accidentally smashed his face in the girl's plot. He was slapped again, just like before. The girl asked if he was okay, mentioning that he had been screaming in his sleep. Shinpei recognized her as the woman who had been shot in his dream but decided not to ask too many questions. Checking his phone, he realized it was only July 22nd, the day before the events at the shrine. Confused, he found himself reading a story by an author named Nagumo about a girl who believed the people around her were being replaced by copies. This explained his strange dream. Back on shore, Shinpei tried to shake off the dream, but when Mio raced toward him on her bike, it felt like deja vu. After pulling Mio out of the sea again, he noticed that her bike's brakes had been cut, just like before. The events started repeating themselves. He met Uncle Alan again, attended Ushio's funeral, and heard that Ushio might have been strangled. The mysterious light flashed again, and most importantly, there was Shiori. Shinpei remembered that her family would disappear tomorrow. If everything was repeating as in his dream, it meant that the shadows were real. That night, while having dinner at Uncle Alan's house, Shinpei started to worry that Ushio was really killed by her shadow, and that Mio might be in danger too. Feeling uneasy, he stepped outside for some fresh air. To his surprise, he saw Officer Tetsu talking to Mio outside, but he knew the real Mio was inside, and she wasn't wearing a uniform. This fake Mio suddenly attacked, stabbing the officer to death. Then, she took a picture of him, copying his shadow. The shadow version of Tetsu then got rid of the real officer's body. Shadow Mio told him to hand over his gun, but he suggested she take it inside and deal with the real Mio there, knowing a gunshot would be too loud right now. At that moment, Shinpei's phone rang, and Shadow Mio quickly rushed over and stabbed him in the neck. He couldn't react fast enough, and as he lay dying, he felt his soul start to drift away, like he was traveling through time. He heard a voice telling him to protect Mio. Suddenly, he found himself back on July 22nd, right as he was stepping off the boat. He realized the voice was Ushio's. As Mio came speeding toward him, he moved to block her, causing her to crash into the water. Since Shinpei couldn't swim, Mio had to jump in and save him. Meanwhile, the girl from the boat was up in a tree, typing in her phone's diary. She noticed someone sneaking into Ushio's funeral. That night, Shinpei called Officer Tetsu and lied about a fight at the bar to keep him away from Shadow Mio, even if it meant getting in trouble for false reporting. After that, he put his phone on airplane mode so it wouldn't ring like before. Knowing exactly when Shadow Mio would show up, he set up a hidden camera to catch her on tape. When he went back inside, he noticed that one of the eyes had changed color. Later, he heard Mio quietly bathing, so he checked on her and she yelled at him, which confirmed she was safe. The next morning, Shinpei checked the phone and found it had recorded Shadow Mio from the night before. He showed the video to Mio, who was shocked to see that shadows and the so-called shadow sickness were real. Shinpei asked if Ushio really saw her own shadow before she died, and Mio confirmed it, thinking the shadow might have been the one to kill her sister. Worried about Shiori, who also saw a shadow, Mio wanted to check on her, but Shinpei insisted on going alone, leaving Mio at home. He headed to Shiori's family store, but it was closed, just like before. He ran into a neighbor who was also confused about the store being shut, so they both went to check it out. They knocked and rang the bell, but no one answered, so they walked in through the unlocked door. Inside, the TV was still on, and the dining table was untouched. Shinpei found 2 dark marks, similar to the ones left by Officer Tetsu's shadow. He decided to check upstairs, thinking the marks belonged to Shiori's parents. As he reached for the light switch, he noticed Shiori standing behind him. He knew this was her shadow, but he acted like nothing was wrong. However, the shadow girl started to get aggressive, but just then, the neighbor called out, causing the shadow to flee. Realizing he had to act fast to save the girl from the boat, Shinpei went to look for her, recalling that she had a large suitcase that should make her stand out. He asked around at various inns, but no one remembered her until he mentioned she had huge massive plot. Unfortunately, they only knew she had passed by and didn't know where she went. Frustrated, Shinpei returned to Uncle Alan's shop, where Mio had just shown up. Officer Tetsu also arrived, upset about the false report, but they quickly shifted the conversation. They talked about how Shiori's family had disappeared, and Shinpei noticed that Tetsu seemed genuinely alive, not a shadow. Tetsu then handed Shinpei Ushio's phone, which she had given him a few days before the accident, asking him to pass it on to Shinpei later, as if she knew something was going to happen. Sue came by as well, so Shinpei had to explain the situation with the shadows to him. He asked if there was any way to tell shadows apart from real people, but no one knew how. Still, they all agreed to trust each other and decided to visit the Hito shrine to get answers. But Shinpei knew Shadow Mio was lurking nearby, so he decided to wait until the next day. Sue reminded them that the island's festival was tomorrow, and the crowd might make it harder for the shadows to act. They made up a secret code to recognize each other in case anything went wrong. As it started raining, Mio and Shinpei took shelter at a bus stop. Mio asked how long Shinpei planned to stay. Originally, he only planned to stay for the funeral, but with everything happening, he realized he had to stay longer. Mio then gave Shinpei Ushio's necklace. The next day, Shinpei was sitting and thinking when Sue came to find him. Even though Shinpei hadn't used their secret code, Sue could tell it was really him. Sue's little sister, Takiko, also showed up, but Sue hadn't told her anything about the shadows, so she didn't know what was going on. The four of them then went to the festival together. While they were there, Shinpei started blaming himself for leaving the island, thinking it was his fault that Ushio had died. Sue had to remind him that Ushio's death wasn't his fault, and that now Shinpei had to protect Mio. If Shinpei couldn't do it, Sue would step in. Shinpei realized that Sue still had feelings for Mio. Their conversation got heated, and the sisters came over to check on them. Sue lied, saying they were just talking about guy stuff. Chikiko then teased Shinpei about the time he accidentally walked in on Mio in the bathroom, which made Sue jokingly threaten to mess with Shinpei. Then, Sue got serious and suggested that after the fireworks, they should go ask the shrine priest about the shadows. Suddenly, Shinpei saw someone who looked just like Ushio and decided to chase after her. He ran all the way to the beach and found Ushio there. But then he noticed she was wearing the same necklace they had buried with her 2 days ago and realized this couldn't be the real Ushio. He knew she was a shadow, but this Ushio seemed to remember her death, sinking into the dark water, and the pain she felt. She even remembered liking Shinpei a lot and regretted not telling him. She asked if they could go to the festival together, and Shinpei noticed she didn't seem to realize she was a shadow. She still thought she was really Ushio. They ran back to the festival, and Shinpei tried to hide her, worried that others might see her. While they were running, Shadow Mio spotted Ushio. Ushio asked why they were hiding, and Shinpei explained that she had died, and if someone saw her, it would cause big problems. Ushio didn't understand at first, so Shinpei had to sit down and explain everything that had happened. Ushio seemed to remember most things, but nothing about being a shadow, and she didn't act like the other shadows, who usually attacked people. Just then, Mio called, and Ushio grabbed the phone. Mio heard Ushio's voice and froze in shock until Shinpei took the phone, making her think she had just imagined it. Mio told him to come to the shrine because the fireworks were over, so Shinpei quickly hid Ushio before returning to the others. When he got back, he made sure to use their secret code to confirm everyone was really who they said they were. Everyone was gathered around the bonfire when Sue suddenly mentioned that Ushio might be watching them, which startled Shinpei. He thought Sue meant it literally. Sue then took Mio aside, and Takiko teased that Sue was about to confess his feelings to Mio. But she knew that Mio already had someone else in her heart. Sue did confess to Mio, but she gently turned him down, saying she only saw him as a friend. Suddenly, Ushio, wearing a mask, came over to encourage Sue, but everyone recognized her immediately because of her voice, hair, and figure. Ushio couldn't hide anymore, so she revealed herself. Mio and Sue immediately saw her as a shadow and told Shinpei to stay away, but he held on to Ushio. Then, Shinpei suddenly grabbed his arm in pain, and everyone realized that Shinpei had also turned into a shadow. Ushio tried to warn everyone to run, but it was too late. 10 minutes earlier, while Shinpei was on his way back, he had encountered Shadow Mio. She had already taken out several people and rushed to grab Shinpei. She knew about the secret camera and that Shinpei somehow knew she would come. Thinking her plan was almost complete, she called for Shadow Shinpei. This shadow had all of Shinpei's memories, so it knew about his ability to rewind time. It absorbed his memories again and knew exactly what to do next. Shadow Shinpei asked Shadow Mio to let the real Shinpei live because he was worried that if Shinpei died, he would just rewind again. He then told Shadow Mio to take out Shinpei's phone and sent someone to capture Ushio. Shadow Shinpei destroyed Shinpei's phone and went off on his own. Meanwhile, Shadow Mio quickly broke Shinpei's arm and was about to break his leg to keep him from escaping. But before she could, she was shot in the head by the girl with glasses from before. But Shadow Mio didn't stay down, she disappeared and attacked again. The girl managed to shoot Shadow Mio's black shadow on the ground, which finally defeated her. Shinpei realized this girl knew how to defeat the shadows. She introduced herself as Nagumo and pulled Shinpei aside as a shadow passed by. But that shadow was actually Ushio. Nagumo stopped Shinpei from going after her because there were too many shadows nearby. She then explained how to tell shadows from real people. The real body of a shadow is their black shadow on the ground, and they hate being stepped on. So, if you step on someone's shadow and they react, they're probably a shadow. Shadows scan people with a special light to steal their information. Just then, Shinpei noticed a large light nearby and asked Nagumo to help him destroy the shadows. They ran up and found Takiko there. She apologized to Shinpei, saying she didn't mean to cause this, but then a shadow with 4 arms killed her right in front of him. Shinpei was horrified to see only blood and a pile of bodies. He then discovered that Sue had been killed by his own shadow while trying to protect Mio. Sue died right in front of Shinpei, and his shadow was quickly shot down by Nagumo. She only had one bullet left, but the four-armed shadow shot back at her. She saw it coming and dodged just in time, getting only a graze on her face. Shinpei asked who this shadow was, but it grabbed him instead. He realized that Shinpei's right eye was actually their mother's eye, which had the power to control time. Ushio woke up at this moment and struggled to help. The shadow explained that Shinpei's eye let him go back to certain points in time, like saving a game. But if the shadow could destroy this world, Shinpei would have no more save points left. Ushio begged Shinpei to save Mio, but before he could, the shadow destroyed her. A giant shadow appeared in the middle of the shrine, and all the other shadows merged into it. Everywhere it spread, both bodies and living people vanished instantly. The pile of corpses disappeared, too. The mother of the shadows then appeared in the sky, and festival goers were swallowed up by the giant spreading shadow. Everyone on the island saw a red light in the sky before the shadow swallowed the entire island, leaving only Nagumo and Shinpei. Nagumo regretted not believing the earlier warnings, while Shinpei asked her to shoot him so he could go back to the 22nd and try to change everything. The four-armed shadow tried to stop them, but Ushio punched it. Nagumo told Shinpei to come find her and say her name when he traveled back again. As Shinpei was being sent back, he saw the whole island being swallowed and met the girl emitting the red light. She saw him, too, as he began traveling back in time. He clearly heard Ushio's voice, warning him that this power has limits, so he needed to fix everything as soon as possible. He returned to the moment he was going home with Mio. Once back, he decided to carefully reevaluate everything, realizing that each time he starts a new loop, it goes back a bit further. He knew he had to be very careful to avoid starting a loop in a situation where he couldn't change things anymore. Meanwhile, Ushio was also sent back with him. We then shift to Nagumo's story. When Nagumo first arrived on the island, she quickly noticed that a man at the dock was actually a shadow. She also saw Mio crash into the sea after bumping into Shinpei. Later, she saw a notice for Ushio's funeral and remembered hearing that name from Shinpei on the boat, so she decided to check it out. When she got there, she was unexpectedly recognized by someone, Masahito, the priest of the Hito Shrine. Even though she left the island 14 years ago, Masahito remembered her. Nagumo stepped on his shadow to check if he was real, and since he didn't react, she knew Masahito was human. She remembered not liking Masahito much because he loved to gossip. Masahito then introduced her to Uncle Alan, who also recognized her because she used to be a regular at his shop. Nagumo remembered that Uncle Alan had 2 daughters, and since his wife had passed away, customers would sometimes play with the girls while he worked. Suddenly, Uncle Alan heard that Mio and Shinpei had fallen into the sea, so he had to leave. Nagumo, who didn't know much about Shinpei, learned that his family moved to the island 10 years ago, but his parents had died in an accident. Hearing this, Nagumo decided to keep her distance from Shinpei for a while. Just as she was leaving, Uncle Alan rushed back to tell Nagumo something important. Ushio had marks on her neck that suggested she had been strangled to death. The police didn't find any DNA from a suspect, and this case reminded Nagumo of what happened to her brother years ago. She decided to open Ushio's coffin to check. After wiping away some powder, she confirmed there were strangulation marks. Nagumo then asked Uncle Alan if Ushio had mentioned seeing a double or doppelganger before she died. Before Uncle Alan could answer, Nagumo's old friend, who was also Shiori's mother, came over, crying because Ushio had died saving her daughter. But Nagumo knew her friend was actually a shadow, and it disgusted her. Afterward, Nagumo met with a hunter named Nezu and told him that Shiori's entire family had been replaced by shadows. She gave Nezu one of her phones so they could stay in touch. Meanwhile, Shinpei, who had returned to this timeline, went to see Shiori first to warn her about the shadows so she wouldn't get copied. After Ushio's funeral, Shiori's parents asked Shinpei what he had said earlier. Realizing that their shadows were listening, he played it off as a joke. He then asked about the color of Mio's underwear from the day before, and she, though finding it odd, answered. This confirmed to Shinpei that Mio had been copied by a shadow the day before. By this time, Shadow Mio had also created a shadow version of Uncle Alan. Shinpei stayed for dinner with everyone that evening, but he used the opportunity to ask some questions. First, he asked about the doppelganger disease, but few people believed in it. Then he asked about Nagumo, and everyone knew her. Uncle Alan even told him that Nagumo's real name was Hizuru and that she used to be a regular customer. He still had her contact information if Shinpei needed it. While Uncle Alan was in the restroom, someone placed an under-maintenance sign on the door. During this time, Shinpei managed to call Nagumo, but the call was answered by Nezu. Nezu knew how much Shinpei understood about the situation and told him to wait at the funeral home. Meanwhile, Shadow Alan came to eliminate the real Alan but got confused by the under maintenance sign and opened the door next to it. He was then ambushed by Nagumo, who attacked the shadow. Shinpei returned to the funeral home, where Nezu told him to stay put. Nezu had shot at the shadow to check on Shinpei. Nagumo had dealt with Shadow Alan and left, receiving a message from Nezu, which led to Shinpei finally meeting Nagumo. He got her address from Nezu and went to meet her in the forest. Nagumo didn't know how Shinpei knew about her, especially since, earlier on the boat, he seemed clueless. When they met again, Shinpei immediately asked her for an autograph, revealing he was a fan of her writing. This confirmed to Nagumo that Shinpei had gone through July 22nd multiple times, so she figured out he was a time traveler. Shinpei didn't hide it and confirmed her guess. Nagumo then asked if he had met her younger brother yet, and Shinpei recounted the events from the previous timeline. Nagumo decided to tell Shinpei about what happened 14 years ago. Shadows had appeared and killed her entire family. After that, she left the island, and now that she was back, she knew the shadows would try to hunt her down. She couldn't reveal her full identity to Shinpei in case he was copied by the shadows, who would then gain that information. Nagumo explained that shadows specifically target one person and their family. Shinpei worried that Uncle Alan would also be targeted, but Nagumo assured him she had already dealt with Shadow Alan. If a shadow copy of someone is eliminated, that person can no longer be copied, meaning there will only be one shadow of that person. Nezu had dealt with his own shadow, so whether Shinpei trusted him was up to him. Shinpei agreed to work with Nagumo and informed her that they had only 54 hours until the festival, when the four-armed shadow would attack everyone. Shinpei wanted Nagumo to help him eliminate Mio's shadow first, but since Shadow Mio only appeared at night, Nagumo had other plans first. He knew she was about to confront Shiori's shadow family, but he warned her that she would fail because Shiori's shadow was still alive on the festival day. Even so, Nagumo insisted on going alone. Before entering Shiori's house, Nagumo tied up her hair and listened to something on her phone. Nezu explained to Shinpei that the person in control of Nagumo's body at that moment wasn't actually Nagumo, but someone else. That person knocked on Shiori's door and asked to come inside. After setting down her suitcase, Nagumo pulled out a hammer and attacked Shiori's shadow mother. Shiori's shadow father rushed in, but Nagumo quickly dealt with him, too. The shadow mother, still alive, tried to fight back but was struck down again. Nezu told Shinpei that the reason Nagumo didn't want him to enter the house was because she needed to figure out why she had failed before and how Shiori's shadow had managed to escape. If Shinpei had gone in with her, it could have caused unforeseen problems. Nezu also revealed that Nagumo, whose real name was Hizuru, had two personalities inside her, herself and her twin brother Ryunosuke, and for short Ryu. 14 years ago, Ryu was murdered, and his body was covered in bite marks. Hearing Nagumo's scream, Nezu had rushed over, and everyone thought Ryu had been attacked by dogs. But Nagumo knew her brother had been murdered because the marks on his neck were similar to the ones found on Ushio. Now, everything was connected, and Nezu vowed to help eliminate all the shadows. While all this was going on, Ryu noticed Shiori acting like a scared little girl, but he knew better. He tried to attack her shadow, but instead of going down, it fought back and pinned him. Ryu had to grab some chopsticks nearby to stab both himself and the shadow, forcing it to back off. He chased after it and signaled Nezu to get ready with their backup plan. Ryu armed himself with a nail gun, planning to trap the shadow with Shinpei's help. He headed up to Shiori's room and texted Nezu where to wait. Shiori's shadow was creeping up behind him, but Ryu warned it that copying him would be a bad idea. It would freeze up and die. The shadow, realizing the danger, tried to escape through the window. Nezu was waiting below with the nail gun, but the shadow was too quick, dodging and running straight at Nezu to throw him off. Luckily, Shinpei was ready and managed to grab the shadow. It bit his hand, but Nezu fired nails into 3 spots on the shadow, pinning it down. He explained that nailing it in 3 places was enough to stop it from moving. Ryu then started questioning the shadow, asking if it was responsible for Ushio's death, and it admitted it was. This made Shinpei furious, and he demanded to know why the shadows were doing all this. But the shadow didn't give a straight answer. Instead, it tried to convince Shinpei that being a shadow was better and asked why he didn't just join them. Ryu knew they had to deal with this shadow quickly before it messed with Shinpei's head any further. Later that evening, Ryu properly introduced himself to Shinpei. He explained that he only steps in for Nagumo during interviews, fights, or anything else where she needs help. When he heard Shinpei was a big fan of his sister, Ryu was about to share more, but Nagumo suddenly returned and punched him. Shinpei noticed that the way to tell the difference between them was by their hair. Ryu had his tied up, while Nagumo's was left down. Nagumo told Shinpei not to get caught up in what the shadow had said. They needed to stay focused on stopping the shadows and not get distracted by unnecessary worries. Their next target was Mio's shadow. After exchanging contact info with Nagumo, Shinpei headed home. When he walked in, he saw Mio holding a knife with blood on her hand, and he freaked out, thinking she was hurt. But it turned out Mio had just cut her hand while cooking. Relieved that she was okay, Shinpei told her to take a break while he finished up. He wanted everything to seem normal so the others could handle the shadow outside. Suddenly, he heard a stomach growling and assumed it was Mio, but it was actually Ushio, who had somehow returned from the future. She tried to warn Shinpei about what was going to happen on the 24th, but he already knew. Just then, Mio walked in, so Ushio had to quickly hide. Shinpei continued cooking, letting Mio relax outside. Uncle Alan came back, and Shinpei quickly wrote a note for Ushio, telling her to sneak up to his room without being seen. After finishing dinner, he took 2 plates upstairs, which made Mio suspicious. She asked why he needed 2 plates, and he made up an excuse about being extra hungry. When he got upstairs, Ushio was waiting for him, and they ate together. Shinpei still wasn't sure if this was the real Ushio or not, so he asked her a bunch of questions. She explained that she woke up on the beach and quietly made her way back to the house. Shinpei touched her, and while she could feel it, it wasn't as intense as with other shadows. He thought about attacking her while she was off guard but couldn't bring himself to do it. Memories of the real Ushio and his promise to make her curry stopped him. Ushio then asked what Shinpei planned to do about the 24th. He told her he was going to try and stop everything from happening. Meanwhile, outside, Nezu and Ryu were getting ready for Mio's shadow, but they hadn't seen anything yet. Nezu was still a bit suspicious of Shinpei. Just then, a shadow snuck into Uncle Alan's house. Ryu asked Shinpei if everything was okay, and Shinpei hesitated, unsure if he should mention Ushio. He wanted Ushio to change clothes since she couldn't keep wearing a swimsuit. But when they tried to mess with the shadow, her clothes vanished, so she punched Shinpei and hid under the blankets. Ushio then asked if Shinpei had locked the door to keep Shadow Mio out, but he knew that shadows could slip through even the smallest cracks, so locking the door wouldn't help much. Ushio didn't realize shadows could do that. Shinpei was convinced that Mio's shadow wouldn't come inside because everything seemed normal so far, but he didn't know it had already snuck in. Later, Mio came to ask Shinpei to bring the dishes downstairs. She was puzzled when she saw 2 sets of utensils and glasses, thinking maybe Shinpei was holding a private memorial for Ushio. After she left, she suddenly returned, but this time Shinpei realized it was actually Shadow Mio. It lunged at him with a knife, but Ushio stepped in and took the hit. Shadow Mio then turned on Ushio's shadow, but Shinpei quickly opened the curtains to signal Nezu. As Shadow Mio prepared to attack again, Nezu shot it just in time, and Shinpei stabbed it to finish it off. Ryu arrived and wanted to eliminate Ushio as well, but Shinpei pleaded with him to let her live. He explained that although she was a shadow, she was different from the others. She had Ushio's memories and emotions and had already saved his life twice. Ryu reluctantly agreed to help treat her injured arm. Nagumo returned and warned Shinpei that if he was wrong about Ushio, she would personally end things to reset the loop. But Ushio was only worried about the real Mio. Nagumo reassured them that the real Mio was still safe, bathing downstairs. Nagumo then realized that it was Ushio's voice that had led her back to the island. Ushio was taken to wash up, knowing that her injured arm would temporarily disappear, but she didn't mind. Nagumo asked Ushio about the voice recording, but while Ushio confirmed it was her voice, she couldn't remember making it. Nagumo pointed out that Shadow Mio was acting differently, likely because the shadows were aware that Shinpei had interfered with their plans at Shiori's house. This suggested that shadows had a way to communicate with each other, and Nagumo worried that this could include Ushio as well. She didn't want to risk sticking together, so they agreed to separate. Shinpei warned Nagumo about the temple, saying that while Mio's shadow might be gone, another could appear. The next morning, Shinpei tried to go about his usual routine. He had given Ushio his bed the night before and went to get something to eat while telling Mio not to disturb him in his room. He later brought Ushio's shell necklace to her, hoping it would help her remember more of what had happened. While Shinpei was at the store, he ran into Sue, and the two decided to head out together. Shinpei, always thinking ahead, brought an umbrella just in case. They made their way to the beach, where Shinpei introduced Sue to Shadow Ushio. Sue was so stunned that he couldn't move at first, feeling guilty for not being able to save the real Ushio. but Shadow Ushio quickly snapped him out of it with a playful kick, reminding him to stay focused. Shinpei handed Shadow Ushio a phone he had found earlier. She noticed that the password had been changed, but she was able to unlock it with her fingerprint. Inside, there was a video recorded at this very beach. In the video, the real Ushio explained that if someone was watching this, she was probably dead, and the phone could only be accessed by her shadow. She reassured Shinpei that her shadow was different from others and would be an ally. Shadow Ushio, watching this video, started to remember everything that had happened. It all began on July 17th, about a week before the current time. Ushio and Mio had gone to Shiori's supermarket to buy some things. Shiori, the little girl, mentioned that she had seen her own shadow on the mountain and felt like someone had been following her lately. She only trusted Ushio, but Ushio didn't take her concerns seriously. Later that day, everyone participated in a beach cleanup event where Ushio was copied by a shadow. This shadow then appeared in front of both sisters before running away. Ushio followed it and saw the shadow's hat disappear. Determined to help Shiori, Ushio promised to solve the shadow problem for her. After the beach cleanup, the sisters went home to take a bath. But things took a strange turn when Ushio encountered her own shadow in the bathroom. She tried to call out to Mio but couldn't, so she kicked the shadow, causing it to let go. Both Ushios thought they were the real one and that the other was the shadow, but they put that aside to focus on the fact that Shiori's shadow must also be somewhere on the island. They decided to check the mountain where Shiori had seen her shadow. Ignoring a prohibition sign, they sneaked into an old clinic that belonged to Sue's family. The place had a reputation for being haunted, so not many people visited. As they searched the clinic, they heard a voice and soon discovered a shadow. It scanned Ushio and tried to transform into her but didn't fully complete the process. The incomplete shadow attacked Shadow Ushio. The real Ushio tried to help but wasn't very effective. However, when she accidentally swung at the shadow, it became angry, broke a wooden stick, and stabbed Shadow Ushio's shadow with it. This moment made Shadow Ushio realize what she truly was, and she tapped into her power, splitting the incomplete shadow in half. The real Ushio, watching in amazement, couldn't help but think how cool that was. Shadow Ushio then understood that she needed to scan the real Ushio one more time to fully recover her body. But as she did, dark thoughts of killing the real Ushio to become the only Ushio started to surface. It seemed like an instinct all shadows had. On July 20th, Ushio and her shadow recorded a video for Shinpei, and now Shadow Ushio remembered everything clearly. Deciding to show Shinpei and Sue what happened next, Shadow Ushio took them back to the 21st, the day when the group went swimming. Everything seemed normal as they enjoyed the day at the beach. Ushio had instructed her shadow to transform into a necklace so she could go outside without raising suspicion. Mio took a child away for a moment, and Shiori suddenly disappeared. Since no one noticed, Shadow Ushio couldn't recreate exactly what happened, but she knew something was wrong. They then found Shiori out at sea, struggling against a shadow. Shadow Ushio sensed the danger and dove in to help. They discovered that Shiori was being dragged down by her own shadow. Shadow Ushio fought back, attacking Shiori's shadow and bringing Shiori to the surface. But Shiori's shadow wasn't done. It wrapped around the real Ushio, pulling her under and strangling her to death. Shadow Ushio managed to free Shiori, but by then it was too late. The real Ushio had been killed. Shiori's shadow then caught Shadow Ushio and tried to erase her data, but she managed to hold on to just enough to survive and recover on the 24th to find Shinpei. Sue and Shinpei were both furious at the shadows for what they had done. Suddenly, the memory shifted, and Shiori's image changed into the terrifying form of the shadow mother that had appeared on the 24th. They had to escape the memory quickly, and when they did, Shinpei found a black handprint on his own hand, a mark from his encounter underwater that day. Shadow Ushio explained that she had almost lost all her data, but luckily, she managed to keep a bit and came back on the 24th to help Shinpei. As it started to rain, the three of them decided to revisit the old clinic. Meanwhile, Mio and Takiko were taking shelter from the rain at a bus stop when they were approached by an uncle who was a police officer. He was looking for Shiori's supermarket. Later that evening, Shinpei met Sue again in the forest. Ushio had transformed into a necklace to stay hidden. The three of them headed back to Sue's family's old clinic. Sue recalled visiting the clinic years ago with Officer Tetsu, but his father had caught him and sent him home. At the time, he didn't think much of it, but now he wondered what his father had been doing there. Once inside, they split up to look for clues. Shinpei hoped to find something about the shadow sickness. Ushio went upstairs while Sue found a cabinet full of strange poisons. Shinpei was searching through some papers when Sue called him over to check out a weird statue. The statue was holding a fish, and at first, they thought it was the fishing god Abisu. But after searching online, they realized it was actually the god Haruko, who was considered deformed and unlucky by the islanders. This was the first time they had seen a version of Haruko like this. Shinpei then noticed something strange on the wall, and called Ushio to check it out. She crawled into a crevice and scanned the area, discovering a hidden lock. Feeling hungry, they took a break to eat some rice balls. As they ate, Shinpei looked at Ushio's full belly and suddenly realized that the Haruko statue might be female. He asked Ushio to check inside the statue, and sure enough, she found a key. Using her hair, she replicated the key and unlocked a door on the wall, revealing a passage below. Ushio warned them that there were likely many shadows down there. Su couldn't understand why his family's old clinic would have such a strange door, but he suspected his father might be involved. The three decided to go down and explore. Below, they found an old bunker that seemed to have been built during the war. There were traces of someone being copied, but it looked like it had happened a long time ago. Shinpei warned Ushio not to rush into battle recklessly because while he could restart the loop if something went wrong, he wasn't sure if she could. In the worst case, he'd have to wait until the 24th to see her again. Suddenly, they saw a rat scurry into an alley, and Ushio sensed a shadow nearby. The shadow had the shape of a child but was missing the upper half of its head. Shinpei had Ushio move to the other side and threw a stone at it to see if it would react. When it didn't, he stepped out to shoot nails at it, but the shadow dodged and rushed at Su. Su tried to defend himself with a stick, but the shadow merged into the stick and grabbed him. Shinpei knew he had to act quickly, so he calmed down and fired 3 shots at the shadow. Su then threw it up in the air, and Ushio finished it off. Even after defeating the shadow, Ushio felt uneasy about another one lurking ahead, so they decided to continue their search. Shinpei asked Su to protect Ushio and not let her die before him. Su then asked Ushio if she could copy the nail gun, and while she could create a duplicate, the copy wouldn't work unless the original was broken or gone. The key from earlier worked because it was a fixed object, but things that needed fuel or power to operate couldn't be copied effectively. However, Ushio's copies would be useful if they ever ran out of ammunition or fuel. She could create new supplies as needed. Shinpei, Su, and Ushio were making their way through a dark cave filled with sharp rocks. The strong smell of salt told Shinpei they were close to the sea. Suddenly, Ushio noticed they were surrounded by shadows. Shadows began coming out from all directions, and Shinpei shouted for Ushio to run. Meanwhile, up above, Nagumo and Mr. Nezu sensed something strange in the sewer and decided to check it out. Back in the cave, Shinpei and the others were running as fast as they could. But Su's stick wasn't much help against the shadows. Shinpei noticed that the shadows were mainly going after Ushio. In a quick move, Su grabbed a fire extinguisher and used it to hold them off since no creature likes fire. At the same time, Mio was trying to find Shinpei and Su but couldn't see them anywhere. She called out, but no one answered. Then she saw Shiori's hair tie on the ground and thought she saw Shiori nearby. She ran towards the figure and bumped into Officer Tetsu. She asked if he'd seen Shiori, but he hadn't. Then, they both saw a shadow pointing towards the sewer entrance. Mio had heard earlier that Shinpei might be down there, so she asked Tetsu to go with her. At first, Tetsu didn't want to because the sewer was smelly and creepy, and he had a date planned. But Mio suggested that if they found Shiori, Tetsu would be a hero, and his girlfriend would be impressed. So, he agreed to go down with her. Back in the cave, Shinpei, Su, and Ushio reached another part of the cave where they saw coral. It was strange to see coral on land since it usually lives underwater. Ushio realized that these corals were actually shadows, and the water in the cave was seawater, meaning the cave connected to the sea. But Su's gas canister was empty, which put them in more danger from the shadows. Ushio admitted she wasn't feeling well because her arm still hadn't healed. She needed her real body to heal it, but since it had been cremated, that wasn't possible. She could make the damaged arm disappear to stop the pain, but it would make her weaker. Shinpei wanted to help her save the arm, but before they could think of a plan, someone appeared. It was Su's little sister, Takiko, and she was with 2 shadows. Meanwhile, Ryo and Mr. Nezu were stuck behind a steel fence in the sewer. Mr. Nezu knew they needed metal cutters to get through. They also wanted to find Masahito's father because they thought this passage might lead to the Haruko cave, which was connected to an old legend. Just then, they heard Mio coming down. Neo and Tetsu, still following what they thought was Shiori, saw her on the other side of the fence. Shiori's shadow made the fence disappear so they could pass through. Ryo and Mr. Nezu decided to follow as well. Takiko faced Shinpei and Su, telling them they had broken the rules by entering a sacred place. Shinpei, suspecting their father was involved, asked Takiko to tell the truth. Realizing she couldn't hide it any longer, Takiko agreed to lead them further if they left their weapons behind. Meanwhile, Ryo and Mr. Nezu were dealing with shadows and noticed that the coral and sea anemones were actually shadows. They were surprised to see Shiori still alive. Ryo thought he had killed her earlier, but Shiori, who was really the shadow named Hain, taunted him. She said she would kill him if he returned to the island and also mentioned that she knew about Ryo's split personality. Suddenly, a four-armed black shadow appeared and demanded to know where Shinpei was. It said he had stolen one of their mother's eyes. Ryo tried to shoot, but Hain blocked the attack. Hain then scanned Ryo and learned that he and Mr. Nezu didn't know where Shinpei was. Seeing no more use for them, Hain told the shadow to kill them. But the shadow was careful because it knew Ryo could see a few seconds into the future. Mr. Nezu bravely jumped in to take the bullet for Ryo, but Ryo still got hit, bleeding heavily. The shadow saw the black blood and knew Ryo's injury was fatal, so it didn't bother chasing them. Hain, feeling hungry, told the shadow to return because Takiko had captured the people they were looking for. Takiko then explained that her father had forced her into this mess, though he had tried to keep Sue out of it. She didn't want Mio to know the truth either and asked Shinpei to keep it a secret. Ushio realized that Shinpei was trying to figure out the truth before resetting the time loop. They followed Takiko to the Haruko cave, where they saw a shadow with a long head, just like the statue they had seen earlier. Shinpei realized that this was the form of the girl he had seen during the festival, and thought that if he could learn her purpose, he could stop whatever she was planning. Takiko explained that this figure was the first form copied by the god Haruko, but instead of using the god's name, it wanted to be called Hain. Hain was the mother of all shadows. Lately, Hain hadn't been able to move and needed a new body. That body was Shiori's. Shinpei was furious, realizing that Hain had killed Ushio and Mio during the ceremony, and was the same monster that swallowed the whole island. Angry, he was about to attack, but Hain's arms stretched out to stop him. Takiko, trying to keep Hain calm, called for food to be brought. Takiko explained that the island usually had 4 deaths each year, and the bodies were given to Hain by her and Sue's father to keep Hain fed. Feeling trapped, Takiko said she was ready to die if Shinpei wanted to take revenge. She pointed to 2 bodies nearby, saying one of them was the real Ushio. Shinpei was shocked and demanded to know what happened to the bones they received earlier. Takiko said those bones were just a copy made by Hain, while the real Ushio's body was replaced. Shinpei asked if she knew about Shiori being kidnapped and Ushio being killed. Takiko admitted she knew about Shiori, but Ushio's death was an accident because she got involved in things she shouldn't have. Sue, angry, demanded to know where their father was to explain things. Takiko said she was forced into this because of Sue, believing that keeping Hain alive was the only way to save their mother. The truth was, their mother had died long ago, and Hain had made a shadow version of her that wasn't controlled, so she acted like their real mother. Hain then tried to eat the other body, and Shinpei saw this as his chance. He signaled Shadow Ushio to summon the nail gun. As Hain began scanning Ushio's body, Shinpei helped Shadow Ushio reclaim the original Ushio's body. Takiko thought Shinpei was being foolish, thinking they could never defeat the shadows. But Shadow Ushio argued that Takiko was being manipulated, with the shadows using her family's weakness to fill their hunger. Ushio didn't care if it was a god or not. She wasn't going to let humans be treated like nothing. Hain, now desperate, turned a nearby nurse into a monster and sent it to attack. Shadow Ushio rushed forward to fight it. Shinpei wanted to reset the loop to make sure they won, but he realized this was a moment he didn't want to lose. After a tough fight, Shadow Ushio managed to fix her arm and punched the monster, destroying it. Shinpei was close to finishing off Hain when his hand was suddenly cut off by the 4-armed shadow, who had caught Mio and used her as a threat. Takiko was furious because they had promised not to hurt Mio, but the shadows didn't care, they were only focused on their survival. Takiko didn't understand because she thought Hain would only eat one last body and then leave, bringing their mother back. As Takiko got more upset, Sue stepped forward to protect her and took a bullet meant for her. But then, the shadow fired again, and things got even worse. Officer Tetsu was searching around when he accidentally found Nagumo. She quickly asked him where Mio was and found out that Mio had been captured. Nagumo then asked Tetsu to take her to the cave where everything was happening. At the same time, Shinpei was seeing something terrible. Both of Sue's siblings had just died right in front of him. Hain, the leader of the shadows, told Shadow Ushio to come over. Hain tried to take Shinpei's eye, which has special powers, but couldn't remove it. The 4-armed shadow told Shinpei that his eye could see different worlds and help create one of those worlds. But Hain couldn't fully control the eye, so they decided to let Shinpei live until their plan was finished, planning to kill him last. Then, right in front of Shinpei and Ushio, Pain crushed Mio's head, leaving them feeling hopeless. Just when it seemed like there was no hope, Tetsu fell into the cave, creating a distraction. Nagumo took the chance to shoot at the shadow, but the shadow blocked the shot and fired back, hitting her. Even though Nagumo was hurt, she gave Shinpei enough time to act. Shinpei drank poison that he had taken from the clinic earlier. Shinpei had planned this with Su and Ushio beforehand. They agreed that if things went really bad, Shinpei would drink the poison to die quickly and start over. He knew drinking the whole bottle would kill him instantly, even though it would be painful. With his last breath, Shinpei told them he would keep repeating the time loop as many times as it took to stop them. Meanwhile, Ushio was trying to reverse the damage Hain had caused. Just before she could be killed, Ushio managed to take Shinpei back to the past. Ushio was heartbroken that Mio had died again, but Shinpei reminded her that they had to focus on stopping the shadows. They went back to the moment when Shinpei first introduced himself to Nagumo and Mr. Nezu, but this time, Ushio was with him. Ushio was excited to see Nagumo and gave her a big hug. Mr. Nezu, however, was suspicious and thought Shinpei might be working with the shadows. Nagumo wanted to understand what had happened, so Shinpei and Ushio explained everything. Nagumo thought that Shinpei's eye might have been given to him by Ushio in some timeline. Ushio then showed Nagumo everything that had happened in the previous timeline. They realized that splitting up wasn't a good idea. They also figured out that there was no need to get rid of Shiori's shadow since it was just a part of Hain. But Ushio still wanted to try to get rid of Shiori's shadow because she believed she could erase it. Meanwhile, Su went to talk to his father, who was too busy to listen at first. But after his mother insisted, Su's father gave him 5 minutes to talk. Later that afternoon, Shinpei's group went back to Shiori's supermarket to carry out a new plan. Ushio explained how she could erase shadows, and Shinpei revealed that he knew Ryu, Nagumo's brother, was inside her. Shinpei asked if Hain had killed Ryu, and Nagumo said it was true. She also explained that Hain had once been her friend. Ryu followed the plan from the previous timeline and went in alone, determined to deal with the four-armed shadow and Hain. While this was happening, Ushio realized that she could recreate the broken nail gun from the previous timeline. Although Shinpei was upset that the original gun was destroyed, Mr. Nezu had 2 other guns for Ushio to scan. Ushio scanned one of the guns and erased the original, so she could create a new one whenever needed. Shinpei told the group that in 2 minutes, Ryu would send a message saying the plan had changed and that Shiori's shadow would run out of the window so they could catch it. But instead, Ryu flew out the window, warning everyone to run away because things were different this time. The four-armed shadow rushed out to attack Ryu, and Hain revealed that it had marked Shinpei's hand in the previous timeline, meaning it could find him no matter where he went. As the four-armed shadow attacked, Mr. Nezu fired 3 shots at it, but the shadow was still able to move and quickly overpowered him. The shadow then grabbed Shinpei, but Ushio managed to save him just in time, and they teleported away. Hain warned that no matter where Shinpei went, she would find him and take away his powers. Shinpei realized they had been too confident and messed up again. Ushio noticed something strange when she attacked the four-armed shadow. It felt empty, like it wasn't really there, but it smelled like Hain. Later, they returned to a different time, and it was raining, which surprised Shinpei because it hadn't rained on the 22nd in the original timeline. Suddenly, they saw Nagumo and her brother Ryu entering Uncle Alan's shop, so they followed them in. Shinpei realized that what he was seeing was a memory from the past, not the present. It seemed like he was watching events from 14 years ago, which helped him remember his parents, who were archaeologists. He even got to see his mother alive again. In this memory, Shinpei saw that Nagumo's brother, Ryu, had discovered someone mysterious who would appear in the clinic when a light in the window turned on. This person turned out to be Hain, who wasn't ready to meet Nagumo's friends and warned her to stop coming. Hain also mentioned someone named Shide, who was greedy and had 4 arms. Time kept shifting, and Shinpei watched as Nagumo's brother, Ryu, found Hain and was killed by her. Hain didn't mean to kill Ryu and was horrified by what she had done. Nagumo was devastated, and from that moment on, Ryu's spirit entered Nagumo's body to protect her. Shinpei was then brought back to the current timeline, before they reached Shiori's supermarket. He told Nagumo that they needed to change their plan because Hain had figured out this timeline. Hain also realized that each time Shinpei died, the time loop would get shorter, so they just needed to keep pushing Shinpei a little bit at a time. Shinpei and Nagumo gathered Mio, Su, and Ushio's group to show them memories from different timelines. Shinpei stood up to speak as the leader of this new plan. While outside, Mio's shadow had killed Mr. Nezu, and Shide had taken his gun and was aiming it at them. After Shinpei finished speaking to everyone, Officer Tetsu thought Shinpei was asking them to risk everything for him. But when Mio, Su, and Takiko all decided to follow Shinpei, Tetsu didn't want to be left out, so he agreed too, even though he was hesitant. Just as Shinpei was feeling confident about their plan, he suddenly found himself sent back in time again. Ushio ran up to him, saying he had been shot in the head, which caused him to rewind. They also realized that Mr. Nezu had been killed, and Shinpei regretted not keeping him close by. The time he could go back was shrinking, and Shinpei knew that Hain, the leader of the Shadows, had figured out his weakness. The Shadows would keep chasing him until he couldn't rewind anymore. Shinpei gathered everyone and told them that he might have only one more chance to go back. In the last loop, he died at 7:55 am, and now it was 7:20. If he died again at the same time, he would only be able to go back to just after 7, and eventually, he wouldn't have enough time left to fix anything. If that happened, he would be trapped in darkness with no way to save anyone. Mr. Nezu was worried that the Shadows might have learned their plan because Hain could have scanned Nagumo's memories. He also thought the Shadows might have copied his gun, making it dangerous to stay put. But Ushio said that shadow copies can't move more than 50 meters away from their original, so their range was limited. She could sense if they came close, but Shinpei knew staying in one place wasn't an option. Instead, he decided to use the mark Hain left on him as bait to lure her in for an ambush. Shinpei waited in an open field, and soon Shide and Hain arrived with their army of shadows. Shinpei challenged Shide to a fair fight, and Shide accepted. Just as Shide sent Shadow Mio to attack, Ushio transformed from a watch back into her human form and carried Shinpei away. Mr. Nezu tried to shoot Shide, but it didn't work. Ushio and Shinpei planned to lead Shadow Mio into a trap, but Hain stopped her and sent other shadows to chase them instead. Mr. Nezu kept causing trouble for the shadows, but Shide ordered Shadow Mio to take him out. Ushio and Shinpei managed to lure some of the shadows to where Ryu was waiting. Mr. Nezu knew Shadow Mio was coming for him, so he prepared to defend himself, but Su missed his shot. Takiko called out two big shadows to help them fight. Ryu was busy fighting the shadows when one of them slipped through, and Shide rushed in to shoot Shinpei. Ryu saw it coming and threw himself in the way, taking the bullet to protect Shinpei. Ryu knew that Hain could see a few seconds into the future, just like he could, so he sacrificed himself to give Shinpei more time. Mr. Nezu fired his gun to help Ryu escape, but Hain noticed Shadow Mio struggling with the two big shadows. She tried to control the big shadows, but they only listened to Takiko because Ushio had cut Hain's connection to them. Ushio led the shadows towards Shide, who absorbed them to grow stronger. Shadow Mio had merged with one of the big shadow's hands and was trying to aim at Takiko, but Mio and Su managed to hold her off. Shadow followed Ushio to a gym, where Ushio spread out a bunch of hair that turned into gasoline. Shinpei set it on fire, knowing the shadows feared flames. Hain had to separate some shadows from Shide to deal with Shinpei. However, Tetsu fired his gun to distract them, and Ushio quickly handed the gun to Shinpei, who shot and hit Hain. Ushio rushed in to erase Hain but hesitated and got caught by Shide. He then shot Shinpei 3 times and decided to kill Ushio first to see what would happen. But Ushio was smart and revealed that the Ushio he caught was just a copy. The real Ushio snuck up from behind and punched Shide, starting to erase him. As she did, Shinpei noticed a human hand inside Shide's body. Hain screamed, and the fire went out. Everyone struggled to breathe as the windows shattered. They escaped while Shinpei ran to Ushio, who was hurt by the broken glass. Fortunately, Shinpei had worn a makeshift bulletproof vest, which saved him from serious injury. Nagumo explained that Hain had sucked all the air out of the gym, creating a vacuum that pulled in outside air, which gave them a chance to escape. Ushio wanted to find out who was inside Shide, but they didn't get the chance. Still, they considered it a victory because no one from their group had died, and they managed to capture Shadow Mio. They decided to turn her into an ally, and Ushio successfully tamed Shadow Mio. Shadow Mio then told them everything she knew, including how she had sabotaged Mio's bike and tried to kill her. Hain had created Shadow Mio to hunt down Ushio, who was considered a traitor by the Shadows. Shadow Mio also shared another important detail. Shadows can only live for a week if their original is still alive. Since the real Mio was still alive, Shadow Mio only had 6 days left to live, but that was enough time to help them. Takiko realized she had been tricked by the Shadows from the start, and it seemed that her father knew what the Shadows were really after but still chose to help them. Su decided to confront his father that night to get answers. Later that evening, Shinpei asked Shadow Mio to protect the real Mio. Shadow Mio noticed that Shinpei seemed a bit nervous around her and asked if he had a girlfriend back in Tokyo. He said he didn't. Then, they all went to Sue's house to find his father, but when they arrived, the door was unlocked, and everything inside had been erased by the shadows. It looked like the shadows were trying to destroy something but couldn't find it, so they wiped out everything. The group then went to the hospital, where they heard the sound of a stuck elevator. When they checked, they found Sue's mother's wheelchair stuck in it. Suddenly, a shadow flashed by and slammed into the morgue door. The group carefully went in and found nothing, but Takiko knew about a hidden passage below, and led them inside. This passage was supposed to have Ushio's body, but it seemed to have been taken to Hane's cave. The group went down and found Sue's mother trying to kill their father. Ushio rushed in and broke her connection to Hane, but Sue's father had stopped breathing. The brothers worked together to do CPR and brought him back to life. Realizing he couldn't hide anymore, Sue's father admitted the truth but still chose to side with Hane. He then grabbed Sue's gun and shot Takiko. He was about to shoot Ushio, but Takiko deflected the bullet, revealing that she was actually Shadow Mio, not the real Takiko. The real Takiko was safe in a car with Mio, protected by Mr. Nezu. The doctor, now caught, let Mio's shadow scan him for information. They found out that his shadow had already been created and killed, giving him immunity from being controlled by the shadows. The doctor was shocked to realize that the shadows had lied to him too. The nurse appeared on the other side, out of Shinpei's reach, holding Ushio's original body, and delivered a message from Shide. Ushio wanted to chase her, but Shinpei stopped her, knowing it was a trap. The doctor, now realizing what had happened, asked them to bring the real Takiko. Sue and Takiko's mother also woke up and learned the truth, that she was a shadow. The doctor explained that if Hane died, all the shadows would die too. Hane wanted to fully revive herself so she could return to her homeland, a place where only shadows lived. The doctor had planned to help her so she could take his shadow and his family's shadows with her. That's why he didn't care if his children died. But his wife made him see how selfish he had been and how much his children and the people on the island needed him. The doctor then pulled out a notebook from a safe, revealing all the people he had fed to Hane, including Shinpei's parents. They didn't die in an accident but were killed because they discovered Hane's cave. The doctor made their deaths look like an accident to cover it up. When Shinpei asked about Shide's true identity, the doctor revealed that Shide was the first person who set up this clinic and was behind everything that had happened. As the night turned into the 23rd, Ushio found Nagumo and told her she was worried. Ushio had seen some of her old memories and realized something strange. Part of her was connected to Hane. She was scared she might lose control like Hane did one day. Nagumo reassured her, promising that if that ever happened, she'd take care of it. At the same time, Mio was dealing with some tough stuff. Her own shadow, Shadow Mio, started talking about all the things Mio felt insecure about. Like how she always thought she was less important than Ushio, and that's why she never told Shinpei how she really felt. If Mio didn't speak up, Shadow Mio would say the things Mio was too afraid to say. On the other side of the island, Sue was shown his mother's ashes. He learned that his family had been secretly working for the shadows for 300 years, and only one person in each generation knew this dark secret. His grandfather didn't want Sue to know because he was too kind and cared too much about other people. Takiko saw that Shinpei was exhausted and told him he needed to get some sleep. Shinpei finally felt safe enough to rest because everyone else was around to keep watch. Meanwhile, Mr. Nezu tried to sneak home, but Ushio caught him and insisted on going with him. She could sense something wasn't right, so she followed him into his house, even though he didn't want her to. Down in the basement, they found Mr. Nezu's wife, who had turned into a shadow. She was out of control, and Mr. Nezu was ready to put an end to it. Ushio offered to help save her, but Mr. Nezu refused, saying that this shadow had killed his real wife, so he couldn't forgive it. He asked Ushio to leave so he could finish it himself. The next morning, Shinpei woke up and saw that everyone was okay, which meant he had more time before his next chance to go back in time. The group decided it was time to get rid of some of the shadows on the island. They split into 3 teams. Nagumo led one group, while Shinpei and Ushio went to another area. Mio, Shadow Mio, and Sue went back to help Uncle Alan and keep each other safe. Before they left, Shadow Mio hinted that Mio wasn't too happy about Shinpei and Ushio going off together, but Mio brushed it off and gave Shadow Ushio some of Ushio's hair so she could recreate her look. Before heading out, Mio told Shinpei that she had something important to tell him later and asked him to make sure he came back safely. Shinpei and Ushio decided to visit their old teacher's house. They found out that a shadow had killed her. This teacher had taught most of the kids on the island, and both Shinpei and Ushio had good memories of her. They decided they needed to make things right. They headed up the mountain and heard some kids screaming. When they arrived, they saw the teacher's shadow was about to attack 3 kids. Shinpei and Ushio jumped in to save them and managed to defeat some of the shadows. But the teacher's shadow got away and tried to attack again, forcing Shinpei to shoot it. After saving the kids, Shinpei and Ushio made up a story to explain what happened and asked the kids to keep it a secret that Ushio was actually a shadow. Just then, Ushio started saying some strange things, but before they could figure it out, Nagumo called. The group met up and realized that all the houses they checked only had black marks left behind. The neighbors thought the families had just gone to visit relatives, so no one was suspicious. It seemed the shadows were hiding, waiting to carry out their plan the next day, and didn't want to get caught by Ushio. Shinpei knew what he needed to do next. He had been thinking about going to the Haruko shrine, where Shadow Mio had killed him the first time. He wanted to meet the priest, Masahito. When they got there, Masahito welcomed Shinpei and invited him inside. Ushio noticed that Masahito wasn't a shadow. They talked for a bit until Shinpei started asking about the god Haruko. Masahito thought Shinpei was just curious, but then Shinpei showed him some photos and asked why Masahito appeared in an ancient picture. Shinpei knew who Masahito really was, the first person who set up Sue's family clinic and the evil 4-armed shadow, Shide. Nagumo and the others were waiting outside, ready to strike. Shinpei asked how Shide could live so long and still look young. Shide explained that he was neither a shadow nor a human. In previous loops, Shinpei and his group had suspected that the 4-armed figure was Masahito, because Hain was the god Haruko, and Masahito was her priest. The 4-armed figure didn't seem like a normal shadow because it couldn't copy or scan anyone, and it used mud to hide its identity. When Rai was killed by him in a past loop, Ushio showed Nagumo, and she was sure it was Masahito, because he always gave her a bad feeling, just like the 4-armed figure. Shinpei's group didn't have solid proof, so they needed to check if Masahito's hands were burned from the fight at the gym the night before. Also, the night before, the doctor had told everyone the truth. Shide had raised Hain to have children for him, and the Shide family split into 2 branches. One branch served Hain as their god, and the other became doctors, indirectly working for her too. When Hain had Shide's son, the child looked exactly like Shide. So, Shide made Hain copy his personality and put it into the child, allowing him to be reborn many times. Even though what Shide did was horrible, Shinpei still wanted to know why Shide killed his parents. Shide answered that they were foolish to try and reveal the truth about Hain, so they had to die. Shinpei hesitated to shoot Shide because he wasn't sure, and Shide noticed this, mocking him. Ushio kept telling Shinpei to shoot, but when he hesitated too long, she acted and killed Shide herself. She then borrowed Shinpei's phone to call the others, but suddenly, the real Shide appeared behind them with burn marks on his hands and stabbed Ushio. Shinpei fired his gun, but Shide had already covered himself in the black mud and attacked Shinpei with a spear. The others rushed in to help, but it was too late. Shide knew he had won this time and regretted that Ushio was gone. Shinpei found himself back at the point where he saved the kids in the forest. But this time, Ushio didn't return with him. Hain, in the form of a crow, appeared and gloated that Ushio was really gone this time. She warned Shinpei that if he died now, everything would end for good. She then sent hordes of shadows to attack him. As Shinpei reached into his pocket, Hain sensed something and decided to leave. Shinpei found Ushio's necklace in his pocket. Shinpei called everyone to tell them what happened, and they were shocked to hear that Ushio was gone. Shinpei planned to meet Nagumo's group on a small island near the sea during low tide. But the person who called Nagumo's group wasn't Shinpei, it was Hain, who had taken on his appearance. Meanwhile, the real Shinpei couldn't make a call because there was no signal. He rushed back to the shop to find Uncle Alan and ask where Mio was. Uncle Alan told him that Mio had left with Sue to meet him 30 minutes ago, but he didn't know where they were headed. Shinpei was confused about how there could still be a copy of him, thinking he had gotten immunity after dealing with his shadow earlier. It seemed that Hain had copied him, but the big question was how she managed to copy his phone and use it when his real phone was still with him. Suddenly, Shinpei found Shadow Mio tied up and helped her remove the nails. She explained that Mio had tied her up out of fear that she would lose control when Ushio died. Shinpei realized he had made a mistake because, in the previous loop, when his shadow copied the phone and merged with Hain, she must have gotten a copy of his phone. Shinpei then got a call from Nagumo, but it was Hain who answered. She gave him a tough choice, telling him the locations of Mio's group and Nagumo's group, forcing him to decide who to save. Shinpei knew he had to act fast to change what was happening. 10 minutes earlier, Sue and Mio had arrived at Uncle Alan's garden and ran into Shide, who had transformed into a black mud form, ready to kill them both. Nagumo's group started to get worried about the call from Shinpei. Something didn't feel right, so Nagumo told Mr. Nezu and Takiko to get ready in case they had to fight. She took a small hammer and went alone to the meeting spot, recording everything to share with Ryu. When Nagumo met Shinpei, Ryu quickly realized it wasn't really him, it was Hain pretending. He called her out, and as they were talking, Shide suddenly attacked Ryu from behind. It was weird because Shide seemed to be two people at once. Ryu knew he usually had an advantage because he could see a couple of seconds into the future, but Hain had figured out his trick, making it useless. Plus, Shide was covered in black mud armor, making it really hard to hurt him. Shide attacked, and Ryu knew he had to dodge and strike back quickly when Shide's feet hit the ground. Ryu also knew there was a tiny delay between when Hain saw the future and when she told Shide what to do, so he had to move even faster. He used the hammer to block Shide's hit and then tried to hit Shide in the head, but it didn't really work. Shide noticed that Ryu was still hurting from a gunshot wound he got the night before, slowing him down. Ryu also knew the body he was using, his sister's, couldn't take much more. He tried to signal Mr. Nezu to cause a distraction so he could escape, but Nagumo took control again. She didn't want to run away, she wanted Ryu to keep fighting. For the first time, they could talk without using the phone. Nagumo told Ryu she had a plan to win, so she asked him to keep fighting without worrying about her. Ryu kept fighting, broke the hammer, and grabbed a spear to attack Shide. He managed to tear apart Shide's armor, making Hain back off. Hain was curious why Nagumo came back to the island even though she knew she'd be hunted. Nagumo took over again and started talking to buy time for her body to recover. She explained that she came back because she felt bad about Ryu's death, thinking it was her fault for being too close to Hain. Nagumo then broke the spear and stabbed Shide, giving Ryu a chance to get inside Shide's armor and separate from him. Shide's mud armor was falling apart, but Nagumo's body was getting weaker. Finally, Ryu managed to get his own body back. Meanwhile, Shinpei and Shadow Mio met Hain in Uncle Alan's garden, told them that Mio and Sue had been taken to Hain's cave. Just as Shadow Mio finished off Hain, she realized that the real Mio had been eaten by Hain's true form. Shinpei didn't reset time yet because he wanted to see what would happen with Nagumo. On the way, Shinpei ran into Takiko, who told him that Mr. Nezu and Tetsu helped her escape, but she was badly hurt and wouldn't survive much longer. She urged Shinpei to hurry to the island to meet Ryu. Shadow Mio showed Takiko some memories, so they both knew time was running out. Shinpei realized he couldn't waste any more time because if he died now, he'd go back to when he led the kids down the mountain. He decided to try saving Shadow Mio first, then stop Sue's group and Mio from meeting Shide. Shinpei reset time again and managed to stop Sue, Mio, and Shadow Mio just in time. He asked Sue and Mio to go back and protect the kids at Alan's shop while he and Shadow Mio headed to Nagumo's group. He believed he'd arrived just in time when Takiko's group joined the fight with Ryu. Mio moved quickly using the shadows, and Shinpei warned her to avoid all the traps Hain had set up along the way. Shinpei got there just as one of Takiko's big shadows was about to be taken down. Despite her efforts, Hain figured out what she was doing and tipped off Shide to defeat Nagumo and Ryu. Mr. Nezu realized their side was losing badly, but just then, Hain noticed something strange. Shinpei was glowing. She told Shide to retreat. Shinpei rushed to Nagumo, ready to reset time again to save her, but Shadow Mio stopped him. She knew Shinpei was at his limit and that the more he tried to reset, the worse things would get. Nagumo told Shinpei that Hain was just a kid being controlled by Shide. If possible, she asked him to help free Hain from Shide's control. Shinpei promised her, and she also asked him to take care of Ryu before she passed away. Losing Nagumo was a huge loss for Shinpei. The doctor stored her body in the basement and warned that the media would soon arrive because news of Nagumo's death would spread. But Shinpei now seemed to have Ryu's ability to see the future and knew what the doctor was going to say before he even said it. He also knew a storm was about to hit. Sue felt guilty for not being able to help Shinpei, and for Nagumo's death, struggling with his emotions. He knew no one blamed him, but Shinpei was carrying too much on his shoulders. Meanwhile, Shinpei realized they had lost a lot: Ushio, Nagumo, and all the weapons Ushio could create. But Shadow Mio asked what was in Shinpei's pocket. It was a piece of Ushio's necklace. Shadow Mio recognized it as the memory Ushio had left behind, which had scared Hain away earlier. Shadow Mio explained that the necklace wasn't Ushio's body but just a memory. Shinpei remembered that if they waited until tomorrow, Ushio would come back again, and if she scanned the necklace, she would regain her memories. This gave Shinpei some hope. Meanwhile, Sue was sitting in front of Ushio's altar, wondering if the memories from the previous loops would stick. Just then, Mio came in, and Sue was about to ask her when she said she was a shadow. But when Sue asked about Shinpei, Mio realized she was actually human and admitted she only saw him as a friend. So, they decided to stay friends. Mio then went to confess her feelings to Shinpei, telling him she really liked him. But Shinpei already knew what she was going to say and gently let her down, apologizing for not feeling the same way. Even though Mio kind of expected it, she still wanted to say it so she wouldn't have any regrets. She went back to cry with Takiko, and Shadow Mio thought that if Hain was destroyed, Ushio would disappear too. She figured that would give Mio another chance with Shinpei, but she didn't want to win him that way. No matter what, everything would be decided tomorrow. Shinpei told everyone they might be able to find Ushio again. He explained that when he reset the timeline, there were always 2 Ushios, one with them and one out at sea, waiting to come ashore on the 24th. But this time, Ushio disappeared, so their only chance was to find the version of Ushio still out at sea. Shinpei believed that before she vanished, Ushio must have figured this out and left her memory behind as a clue. He showed the group how the necklace he had pointed towards where Ushio might be. Mr. Nezu guessed that the necklace worked with the tides, meaning when the tide was highest at 6 AM, Ushio would be closest to them. That's when they'd need to act. If they messed up, they'd lose her forever. Meanwhile, Shide told the people on the island what they were going to do at the festival. Mr. Nezu was surprised to talk to Ryu again, now inside Shinpei's body. They chatted a bit about Nagumo, and then noticed the necklace reacting. Hain had lost track of Shinpei for 2 hours. She figured out that he was hiding somewhere with no signal, so she couldn't find him. She decided to change her plan and sent her shadows to search for Ushio first to stop Shinpei's group from finding her. Shide joined in the search too. Suddenly, Shide noticed something odd. A shadow broke away from the group. That's when he realized it was actually Shinpei hiding inside a big shadow. Shinpei had been following the signal from the necklace, which was leading him to Ushio. Shide chased after him, and soon they saw Ushio. She was thinking about Shinpei when she heard his voice. Then, a big shadow grabbed her and brought her to the surface. The big shadow sacrificed itself so Shinpei could restore Ushio's memories. With her memories back, Ushio could fight off the other shadows herself. Shinpei's plan worked without them losing much, and Ushio noticed that Shide's mud armor was damaged from their last battle. She wanted to attack again, but Shadow Mio pulled her back, telling her they needed to stick to the plan. Shinpei knew how to hide from Hain, so he wanted to try again. But Shide tried to shoot him in the hand. Thankfully, Ryu saw this coming and helped Shinpei dodge the shot, so Shinpei could take another shot and reset the timeline. Shinpei's group had learned that they could hide inside the big shadow and still control it to fight. But they also knew that if the big shadow got hurt, they would feel it too. Now that they had Ushio back, they went to their hiding spot under Hain's cave. While Hain hadn't detected them yet, they needed to move fast and destroy her real body. However, Hain and Shide had set up traps to slow them down. The first was a shadow monster. Takiko decided to stay back with the big shadow to fight it, so the rest could move forward. Sue told his sister to be careful and not get hurt. Shinpei's group then reached a pitch-black wall that healed itself when they tried to break it. Ushio tried to smash through, but it didn't work. Shinpei had an idea and told Shadow Mio to turn into fireworks they had copied before. She exploded, creating a hole in the wall for them to pass through. As they went through, Shide showed up, so they rushed through before the wall closed. Mr. Nezu stayed back to fight Shide, giving the others time to escape. The group made it to Hain's body, and Shinpei sensed a buzzing sound she was making. This was how she controlled the shadows, and because Ryu was inside Shinpei, he could feel it too. But Ushio helped erase that signal, making Shinpei feel better. Now, Shinpei and Ushio had to take on Shide together. Ushio punched Shide away and went after Hain's body. Shide tried to stop her, but when Ushio was about to strike Hain, she hesitated. This gave Mio the chance to stab Shide, thinking they had finally beaten him. Shadow Mio thought it was over, but then Ushio's eye turned red, just like Hain's, and Shinpei's right eye changed too. Shadow Mio realized that Ushio hadn't fully defeated Shide, and he was still alive. Shide figured Hain was no longer useful and decided to get rid of her. Hain begged him not to leave her, but he turned his hand into a blade and cut her in half. Suddenly, a portal opened, and Shide said he would wait for Shinpei on the other side. The portal started pulling everyone in. Ushio tried to stop Shinpei, telling him that if he went in, he might never come back. But she also wanted to go alone, so Shinpei refused. Ushio asked Ryu to take Shinpei out of there, but Ryu wanted to keep his promise to his sister and help Hain. Shinpei told Ushio that he would always be there for her, and together they stepped into the portal. Shinpei woke up in Hain's world, realizing this place was different. Time didn't work the same way here, so if he died, he wouldn't be able to reset. He decided to find Ushio, and Ryu could tell she was close because the gun she had made was still around. Shinpei was hurt, so Ryu offered to share the pain with him. As they looked around, they noticed this place looked like the island they knew. They heard a song and saw a small glowing ball that reminded Shinpei of Mio. The ball moved, and they followed it to an ancient town where they saw shadows that looked like people. But Ryu noticed these shadows didn't seem dangerous. The ball led them to a group of shadows, and then they disappeared, revealing Ushio in the middle. Ushio looked sick, and Hain suddenly appeared from inside her. Ryu remembered that his sister had said if Hain ever took over Ushio, Nagumo would have to stop her. Since Nagumo was gone, Ryu was ready to do it himself. Ryu prepared to shoot, but Shinpei stopped him. Ushio told them she was still okay and explained that the Hain inside her wasn't the one who had hurt Ryu. She revealed that Hain had two sides. One was the human girl who had been copied by Haruko, and the other was the god Haruko, worshipped by the islanders. The Hain inside Ushio was the one who had been friends with Nagumo. Hain wanted to talk to them, and when they agreed, she stepped out. She explained that she had been having a long dream, which was actually Ushio's memories. She felt bad about the things the other side of her, Haruko, had done. Ryu told her not to apologize because the real villain was Shide, who had been controlling everything. Shide wanted to take Ushio's eye and use it to reach a higher place where he could control time and space. Ushio then said she had read Shide's thoughts and found out that he wanted to destroy the world. Out of nowhere, bombs started falling like it was some crazy war scene. Ushio quickly jumped in to protect everyone from the explosions. Shinpei realized that if Shide wanted to use this special eye to get back to the real world, then they could probably use it too. Hain explained that these bombs were coming from Haruko's memories, and they needed to stop her from remembering this terrible day. Shide was forcing Haruko to relive something awful, and it was messing everything up. Hain said she would try to keep Haruko's bad memories from taking over, but they still needed to deal with Shide and his super tough armor. Ushio was sure she could handle it since she had some new powers from Mio. Hain managed to freeze Haruko's memories, stopping time. Ushio jumped from one bomb to another, heading straight for Shide, who was hanging out on a plane. But when she got there, she realized Shide's armor was empty. Shide just laughed and tried to attack. Right before he could grab her eye, Ushio ate a piece of her old self and turned into a kid again. She got her eye back and went after Haruko, erasing the memory of the bombs. As she was falling, Ushio told Shinpei that Shide's real body was still in the real world, using Haruko to control the armor. Shinpei didn't get what was happening with the armor, but Ushio noticed something important. The part of Shide's armor that she erased wasn't healing. That meant if she could erase all of it, they could win. But Ushio passed out, and Shinpei rushed to catch her. Hain explained that Ushio couldn't fully heal and had to stay in her kid form for now. Since Ushio couldn't fight anymore, Shinpei thought about Ryu taking over Shide's armor, even though it was super risky. Ushio woke up and told them through their minds that she could make more bullets for the gun. But it would take 2 minutes, and they had to hold on until then. Shide started getting suspicious, realizing they had some kind of plan. He didn't expect Hain to turn against him, but she told him he wasn't the same person anymore. Shide didn't care and just wanted to do what he felt like. He attacked, ignoring Shinpei's bullets because they didn't hurt him. Ushio switched the gun into a hammer like the one Nagumo had used before. Shide tried to hurt Ushio, but Ryu jumped in, even though it hurt Shinpei's hand, and pushed Shide away. Shide then tried to shoot Shinpei, but Ryu dodged. The bullet turned into Shide, who suddenly appeared behind them and chopped off Shinpei's left arm. Ryu realized that weapons weren't working anymore, but Shinpei said it was time to change their plan. They kept fighting, with Ryu dodging Shide's attacks until he finally got close enough to touch Shide and take over the armor. Shinpei was in so much pain that he almost blacked out because Ryu wasn't blocking the pain anymore. Ushio had just finished making the gun, but right then, Shide trapped Ryu in some mud and threw him out of the armor. With control back, Shide told Shinpei that Nagumo had tried this trick before, so he already knew how to deal with Ryu. Shinpei was just a few steps from the gun, but he started to fade away. Ushio turned herself into a bullet and told Shinpei she was ready for the final showdown. As Shinpei ran toward the gun, Shide tried to stop him. Shide managed to hit Shinpei before he could grab the gun, but Hain moved it closer to him. Shinpei grabbed the gun, dodged Shide's attack, and shot him. With Shide gone, his real body in the world outside was too old and weak to do anything. Ushio turned back to normal and held Haruko in her arms. She said she would take away Haruko's pain. And when she started to do it, they were suddenly sent back to Hitagashima Island 300 years ago. They saw a big whale on the beach, and Hain was walking toward it. Ryu figured out this was when Haruko first took over Hain, starting the whole mess. Ryu tried to stop Hain, but then she felt someone grab her hand. It was Shinpei, warning her not to go near the whale, and she freaked out, thinking she saw a ghost, and ran away. Ryu explained that Shinpei's awakened eye let him touch and change the past now. Haruko was still trying to reach the whale, but Ushio handed Haruko to Shinpei and went to the whale herself. She explained that she finally understood what Haruko wanted, to erase the whale so all this bad stuff wouldn't happen again. Haruko cried out, but when Ushio erased the whale, Haruko calmed down and disappeared. Hain also started to fade away and thanked them. She asked Ryu if they could be friends when she was reborn, and Ryu agreed. Both of them disappeared, and soon after, Ushio began to fade away too. Shinpei told her he wanted to go with her, even if it meant disappearing too, because he didn't want to be without her. But Ushio didn't want him to disappear and promised to send him back safely because everyone was waiting for him. Even though they went through a lot, Ushio was happy to have spent this time with Shinpei. Shinpei tried to tell her how he felt, but Ushio vanished before he could. Ushio found a way to break the time loop and reset everything. She left a message on Shinpei's phone and sent him back to the moment when he was sitting on the boat, telling him to find her. Shinpei woke up and saw Nagumo on the boat, accidentally bumping into her. He saw Nagumo sitting in front of him and felt relieved that she was still alive. He told her who he really was. When he got off the boat, he saw Nagumo glaring at him with suspicion. Shinpei didn't understand how he knew she was Nagumo, but then he saw Mio rushing toward him and tried to stop her. However, her bike's brakes weren't cut, leaving him confused about what was going on. Shinpei met the Su brothers again and was glad they were okay, even though he couldn't remember why he was so worried before. He didn't know why he came back, but he was told that Ushio had sent him a message, so he returned. He walked down the street and met Ushio again, who jokingly said she should punch him for leaving without saying goodbye. Instead of going home, he went to Alan's restaurant because his parents were still alive and weren't at home, so they told him to go eat somewhere. When he got to Alan's, he met everyone again. He remembered why he came back on the 21st. He got a message from Ushio, asking him to return to the island to visit his hometown. He was worried that something bad might happen, so he decided to come back. He then went to Shiori's supermarket and saw that the kids were still safe. There was going to be a fireworks festival soon. The kids mentioned that the festival lined up with Hain's birthday, something Shinpei hadn't noticed before. He then went to the shrine and met Masahito, who was old and had a son. Masahito's son said that Ushio had been cleaning trash off the beach because she lost her necklace there. Shinpei suddenly remembered something and asked to leave. He met Ushio again on the beach, and they talked about a dream they both had, where they thought they would never see each other again. Shinpei then found the necklace and decided to put it on her himself. 2 days later, Shinpei had a conversation with Nagumo, who was curious about how he knew her from a dream. She started thinking about parallel worlds. At this point, Su's mom also arrived. They were married, and Hain and Shiori were their daughters. Ushio and Mio had finished getting ready for the festival, and Shiori's mom asked everyone to stand together for a group photo. That night, the festival happened, and everyone was having a great time. Su asked Shinpei if he had made up with Ushio yet, but he hadn't. Su then suggested that Shinpei go to the beach with everyone to watch the fireworks, so Su could have some alone time with Mio. Shinpei knew Su still hadn't given up on Mio. When Mio asked, neither Su nor Shinpei said anything. Then, Shinpei noticed Nagumo was always writing her novel without taking a break, so he reminded her that the fireworks were about to start. Ushio then called Shinpei and told him to meet her at the beach so Su could have some privacy for his confession, even though they both knew Su would probably get rejected like last year. But it seemed this time Su had made some progress, as Mio hadn't turned him down right away. Shinpei and Ushio met near the beach. He brought her some food, and they finally made up. Now, it's Ushio's birthday and Mio is making a cake. And that's where this video ends. Watch this next video.
Take you